What's up, guys? My name is Tim Roswick, and something came up on Reddit the other day that I wanted to kind of talk about because I think it's an important topic. And what better way to do it than sit here and talk to you on the camera like I know best? So, the title of his post is Indie Developer Leaders Silent as Most Indie Developers Don't Even Make Minimum Wage. How 82% of indie games developers aren't even making minimum wage off of their products. I'm going to go ahead and dismiss their silence because I think there's a lot of people that talk about this. The vast majority of stuff in a lot of the dev conferences is about discoverability. I think discoverability is the number one problem in all of business, but especially in artistic industries. So I'm not even going to go into that. But what I want to talk about today is how 82% of indie game developers aren't even making minimum wage off of their products. Now, I don't know if that's an accurate number, but I would guess that it's very high. Because most people don't make back their investment. And it is like this in every artistic industry ever. It's like this in movies, it's like this in music, it's like this in art, it's like this in writing, if you're writing a book. It's like this in literally every artistic endeavor ever. And the reason that there's a disparity between the upper class and the lower class is because, here's the kicker. The reason the rich get richer and the reason the poor people don't get richer is because the rich have figured out a way to generate money. They figured out how to do that, right? They know the process. So once you understand how to make money, you can make more money. On top of that, the rich people have assets that generate income over time. Right? Their money is an asset. It literally generates money for them. If you take $100,000, you stick it into an index fund, guess what? It's going to be $105,000, then $115,000, then $130,000, then $150,000, then $180,000, and it keeps going up and up and up. And it's called compound interest. And basically, their money can grow by just sitting there. Same thing is true in indie games. Same thing is true in any artistic industry ever. If you have spokespeople for the indie industry, you look at some of the top indie developers out there, right? Like the more verbal ones that talk out there and created a platform from their actual games. Like Edmund McMillan. If you look at like Rami, if you look at a lot of the guys that do this, like there's so many of them. There's so many of them out there, right? And the reason why they continue to do well, while other people continue to do poorly, is because they understand that they need exposure. And they have built a platform over time using their games as fuel to get exposure for themselves, right? If you think about it, that's kind of what I did on this YouTube channel, right? I built a platform for myself to get exposure for anything that I do. So anything that I put out automatically gets eyeballs on it. Unlike little Johnny down the road, who maybe doesn't have a YouTube channel or doesn't have a platform or doesn't have any followers on Twitter, when he makes something, he gets 0 views by default. 0 people see it by default. And if he doesn't understand how to get eyeballs on his stuff, he's never actually going to get eyeballs on his stuff. So here's what I have to say. Complaining about the fact that there's a disparity between people that make it and people that don't is stupid. Because yes, there's a disparity. One group has figured out how to do this, and they've took it upon themselves to learn this stuff. And they've built assets over time that help cement their success, right? Every game that Edmund makes now is on top of the previous games. And he can build his audience over time. And he takes his successes and he uses them as momentum for his next successes, right? So, of course, the people that are doing well continue to do well, and they do even better. And the people that are doing poorly, they continue to do poorly, and they do even worse. Because what happens if some dude quits his job and spends $100,000 trying to make his dream game? He spends all of his savings and he builds an MMORPG over 5 years and he launches it and he makes 10 grand, right? Of course, he didn't think that through. He didn't think about the risk and reward. He didn't think about the investment. He didn't think about his time investment. He didn't think about marketing. He didn't think about exposure. He didn't think about aligning himself with the right people that could put him in a position to be successful. Okay, so there are so many issues like this that come up all the time where people complain and they say, hey, it isn't fair. This guy gets a ton of exposure and he doesn't do anything. He just talks, right? But guess what? That guy knows that, and that guy has worked very hard to get in that position, and that guy continues to do what he does because he gets exposure on his stuff. And that's the name of the game. It's not just about making the thing. It's about the ability to get people to buy the thing. You need both. You need both for any artistic industry ever out there. And so my take on this is that you should stop complaining. You don't want to talk about how 82% of indie games don't make minimum wage, because of course they do. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're making games and pushing them out there and crossing their fingers hoping they do well. You can't do that. That doesn't make sense. That's not a business. That's a hope and pray strategy, right? That doesn't get you anywhere. So if you want to be successful, you have to take the bull by the horns. You have to take responsibility for your lack of eyeballs. If you get 0 eyeballs on your stuff, it's your responsibility to improve that. It's no one else's. It's not the unfair game industry. It's not all the shit asset flips. It's not all the people that buy source code and just push stuff out there. It's not all the clones on the App Store. It's your responsibility to get eyeballs on your stuff. That's what it is. Nobody else's fault. So if you're having trouble marketing, yes, it's a huge problem. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, it's getting harder. But guess what? It's still your responsibility to do. So you have to learn this stuff. You have to be dedicated to this stuff, and you have to make it happen. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. So my message to you is to stop complaining and make it happen, and jump on the wagon and make shit happen. Okay? That's the only way to really move forward. And personally, that's what I've done. I've built an audience here on YouTube. I'm taking my audience elsewhere. I have an audience on email. And it's helped elevate the success of some of my games, and it will continue to do so. It continues to do so over time because I built an audience, and I recommend that everybody watching this do the same thing. Build an audience, because you can never go wrong if you have an audience. You can literally sell anything. Like I've said 1,000 times, I could come out with a rap album right now and people would buy it because I have an audience. You got to have an audience. That's the only way to ensure that you're not a slave to anyone else, right? It's the only way to make sure you don't trade time for money. It's the only way to make sure that you're going to have success when you push it out. So I hope you found this useful. If you did, leave me a thumbs up and a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Once again, my name is Tim Roswick, and I will see you again next week.